Guyana. Apagaluka anam kun John Olympic was angatwarak Mary Gregory was ungalaksu. Apagaluka atam kun Robert Salmon, Marjorie Jones flew New York Agumuk. Bani Kagana Dan Salmon, Julia Olympic was Makuchik. Huinga atka apapi gaingunga, Ivya Gagmiungunga. I belong to the place where Lake Iliamna is swallowed by the Igiugig River, Alaska's largest lake and purest watershed, where our people have lived since time immemorial, sustained by the world's largest sockeye salmon run. My last name is also fitting. We are a salmon culture, a sovereign, self-governing nation. I am a mother of 6 and a language learner of the highly endangered Yupik language. I teach the little Yupik that I know at the Igiugig school. Recently, in a lesson on identity, their much older, non-native teacher came up to me and thanked me, for he had not thought of his own lineage and did not fully know it. This shouldn't have come as a surprise to me, but it did. It reminded me how and why the transmission of our ancient language is so central to well-being. As we navigate our way in this globalized world, finding ourselves in exotic locations like Dubai for the very first time. In our Yupik language, the center is the starting point from which your relation to the world is communicated. For example, Wanihua, I am here. This utterance sends a message that I am the speaker and you all are the listeners. That the words coming from my mouth are in the present. And they are truths that I know from seeing with my own eyes. But if they are actually words from the past or words passed on to me, the Yupik language so graciously acknowledges and communicates that to the listener, so that you, as the listener, know exactly where I'm coming from, physically, mentally, and spiritually. Language is so powerful. Well, we need the slide to advance, Guyana. So to me, well-being begins with the center, with self. Self begins with knowing who you are. A Babi Vaingunga, I am a Babi girl. I carry forward a very old ancestral name. Igiugig, I belong to Igiugig, Nunaka, my homeland. I have an inherent birthright to these lands and waters. Nuna Nikfa, happiness, stems from the very word from my homeland. It means being content and knowing who you are. Our very word in Yupik for happiness is tied to the land. This belonging generates my awareness, Sanguk. This awareness of the world around me and my role in it teaches what I'm responsible for and whom I'm accountable to. That this weight on my shoulders, I understand and I bear it. That if I do nothing to address it, I will be gifting it to my children and their children. And a person can only carry so much before crumbling. I am aware that the decisions that Igiugig make every day can mean the difference between having a salmon to share tomorrow or being alienated in our own homelands due to losing our language, our way of communicating to the world around us, and our value system. When I travel from Igiugig to Dubai, I spent 22 hours in the sky. When you stand on the shores of Lake Iliamna, as far as your eye can see, you only see the land and water. No other human being, no development. We've managed to live there for 8,000 years, yet any tourist that shows up thinks it's a pristine landscape, an untouched wilderness. As I flew above Mother Earth all those hours, only to watch satellite imagery of her carved up into tiny blocks and tracts of land, each with its own ruler and its own set of rules, each with a dictated, manipulated purpose to produce enough to feed the insatiable, I am humbly reminded that we come from a people and a place and a way of life so endangered and so unique that it requires our collective wartime speed and an unrelenting, unapologetic inner drive that says, we must show the world. Western science hasn't been able to prove that there is a paradise in the life after now. But their trips to outer space have validated our indigenous knowledge system that this Mother Earth is our Garden of Eden, and it's all we have for certain. There is a higher quality of living. That is one governed by indigenous values that keep the well-being of our people central to decision-making. 10,000 years ago, today, and tomorrow, that we have it within us to apply our indigenous knowledge on energy efficiency, that we can choose to transition from seal oil lamps to lighting our village by harnessing the energy from our river or our wind power, that we have the right to select the type of technology that we know will not disturb our salmon run, because salmon come first, and they always will. That we can choose which section of river to install this river power system, that our ancient wisdom informs us that the in-migrating millions of sockeye salmon will swim around, and the out-migrating millions of sockeye salmon smolt will swim over. We have the indigenuity to determine that if the warming climate means that our caribou herd will forever move north, then we can turn to our history of reindeer herding or growing our own food for food sovereignty. Or that we can say no to the promised trillions of dollars mining would bring to our region, because we understand our way of life to be priceless. And that we are to be the speakers on these issues: resource development, transitioning off of diesels, the right to steward our lands and waters of our traditional territory, not our mandated little tract of land. That we ourselves can self-determine which technologies we'll adopt or adapt. We are to be the speakers on these issues, and the external world, our listeners. And that the ability to make these decisions feeds into our well-being, and it should be our choices to make. Maybe I have to point it. So what is well-being? A definition, well, I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. I come from it. A definition I adopted, though, is a way of being with others that arises when people and ecosystems are healthy, and when individuals, families, and communities equitably practice their chosen ways of life and enjoy a self-defined quality of life now and in future generations. Here is a picture of our old ancient village before it was decimated by the Spanish flu pandemic of 1919. We had 3 survivors. We lost our dances. We lost some of our belief system. We lost so many culture bearers. There was so much devastation. But we saved our language, our way of life, preserved our value system. And this history in the last 100 years has taught us that those are the only tools we need to build. We brought our dances back. We're revitalizing our language. We brought our ancestors home from the museums. I still put up fish every year where my family and their family and thousands of years of family have put up fish. We have a saying that perpetuates our definition of well-being, and it keeps us focused. Giuglichput giuniuvaluku dawam, carrying towards our future only. This World Expo and this Te Aratini festival has really reminded me of a quote that I use in leading the Aleut. When we talk about sustainability, when we come together using Indigenous planning theory that dates back to time immemorial to decide where we as a people want to be and vision our future, it might seem daunting, it might seem so challenging. How do we get there? Everything we want to be today, our ancestors already were. What we're trying to achieve isn't impossible. It already was. We come from perfection. Something brought us all together in this moment today. We all left a homeland challenged with trials, tribulations, all at various stages in our own quest for well-being, all with many things to be celebrated and success stories to be shared, all during a time of accelerated, alarming change in our environments and our economies. Dawam, Wankuda Madukut, Dubayami. The challenges in this world are greater than you and I. We are all here together in Dubai. So if I may leave you with one question, Gituyet, who are you? Because when we find self, we will find well-being within. And where I come from, a nation of 70 people, strong, one of the tiniest nations in the world perhaps, one person can transform economies, one person can save a language, one person can transform government, which then transforms worlds, and the cycle can self-perpetuate, and with proper maintenance, it will self-sustain. Guyana Dailuchi Unwamuk, thank you for coming today. Huinga apapi gaingunga gituyet.